Hello, chismosas y chismosos, and welcome back to another episode of Bay Area Housewife of True Crime. If you're new here, I'm Audrey, former paralegal turned stay-at-home mom who loves true crime. The cases I cover are wild. Some topics may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. Grab your hot Cheetos and let's dive into today's case. Today I will be covering the case of Chris Benoit. This case was requested by James Marshall. I'll be sure to tag him below. Thank you, James, for your request. I hope you enjoy my take on this notorious case. If you're watching and have a request, please let me know in the comments which case you'd like me to cover next. Just as a side note, my husband and now our almost 5-year-old daughter are big WWE fans. My brother is also a huge WWE fan, and I grew up watching The Rock, The Undertaker, and Hulk Hogan. Sadly, there is a lot of true crime in wrestling, and it could actually be its own whole series. 40-year-old WWE superstar Chris Benoit murdered his 43-year-old wife Nancy and their 7-year-old son Daniel before hanging himself in their Fayetteville, Georgia mansion. It is reported that Chris first strangled his wife Nancy on the evening of June 23, 2007. The next day, he asphyxiated and sedated his son while lying in his bed. The day after that, Chris committed suicide in his weight room using a pull-down machine. Steroids, alcohol, drug abuse, trouble in his marriage, and CTE have been proposed as an explanation as to what led Chris to commit such horrendous crimes. CTE is short for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. CTE is a progressive degenerative disease which, like Alzheimer's, starts with memory loss, mood swings, and difficulty in concentration, developing into progressive dementia, even possible thoughts of suicide. Unlike Alzheimer's, CTE can result in significant aggression and lack of impulse control. CTE is caused by repeated hits to the head. Not all boxers, soccer players, football players, and wrestlers get CTE, and today's medical science can only diagnose CTE for certain after death. It is still not possible to diagnose CTE in living people, and only those individuals suspected to have had CTE are tested after death. According to police reports, Nancy's hands were tied with electrical cables and her legs were tied with duct tape. A ball of sock and tape were found in the trash, which indicated to investigators that Chris had used this to gag Nancy prior to her demise. Her body was found wrapped in a blanket alongside a Bible. Nancy's injuries suggested Chris had pressed his knee into her back while pulling a cord around her neck. Nancy's toxicology report came back positive for alcohol, hydrocodone, and Xanax. The alcohol level found was 0.184%, which is more than twice the legal limit. However, toxicologists were unable to determine if the alcohol in her body was due to the process of decomposition or her consumption of it. Both are a possibility, and Nancy had confided in friends and neighbors that she was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol to cope with stress. Nancy Toffolani was born on May 17, 1964, and was raised in Florida. She married her high school sweetheart, Jim Dowse, shortly after graduating high school. She was beautiful and started modeling for a wrestling magazine when she was just 20 years old. In the ring, Nancy was referred to as Woman and Fallen Angel. Nancy married her second husband, Kevin Sullivan, in 1987. Kevin was a fellow wrestler and booker. It was actually his idea, Nancy have an on-screen affair with Chris Benoit. They would craze the media by pretending to go on dates and share a hotel. Paparazzi would follow them, and the juicy details were a big part of their storyline. The on-screen affair later turned into a real-life affair. In 1997, Nancy divorced Kevin and shortly after became engaged to Chris. Chris was also married at the time with 2 kids. Nancy gave birth to her only child, Chris's 3rd child, Daniel, on February 23rd, 2000. And Chris and Nancy were married on November 23rd, 2000. Directly after the news of the family annihilation, sources claimed Daniel had needle marks on his arms from growth injections. A statement that a Fayette County District Attorney, Scott Ballard, has publicly apologized for. I found it sickening to find articles, podcasts, recordings, and interviews that refer to Daniel as retarded and dwarf, which are awfully derogatory terms that are completely unacceptable. Christopher Michael Benoit was born in Montreal, Quebec, Canada on May 21st, 1967. Chris suffered a brain injury as a result of a car accident when he was 6 years old. Chris fell in love with wrestling as a young boy and dreamed of becoming one of the best, a dream he ended up achieving as soon as he turned 18. He was best known for being the Canadian Crippler and the Rabid Wolverine throughout his wrestling career. During his early days of wrestling, he accidentally broke a fellow wrestler's neck. The wrestler's name is Sabu. I told my husband this, and he said that wrestlers break each other's necks, backs, and other bones in wrestling all the time. I never thought about it that way, but statistically he is correct. Chris professionally wrestled in Japan between 1986 and 1999. He had neck surgery in 2001, was given painkillers, and like so many others, got hooked. He also had a hernia repair in 2006. In the days leading up to the murders, evidence exhibits Nancy sending the following text to Chris. Money orders don't replace hugs, and get off the stuff. And as I previously mentioned, Chris married his first wife, Martina, in 1988, and they had 2 children together named David and Megan. We've run out of time. Please go to part 2.